The old man, a retired stonemason named Thomas, sat on his porch, meticulously sharpening a chisel. The rhythmic rasp of steel against stone was a familiar sound, a comfort in the quiet afternoon. He wasn't working on a grand sculpture, just preparing his tools, a task he'd performed countless times over a lifetime. He often thought of Sisyphus, the mythical king condemned to push a boulder up a hill, only for it to roll back down forever. Most people saw Sisyphus as a symbol of pointless toil and eternal punishment. But Thomas, in his own way, understood Albert Camus' startling assertion: the struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. Camus wasn't joking. He was pointing to a profound truth about human spirit, about finding joy not in the destination, but in the defiant, conscious act of living. Even when life offers no ultimate meaning or escape from its inherent absurdity. Thomas remembered his early days as an apprentice. Hours spent chipping away at rough stone, often seeing little progress, feeling the ache in his shoulders, the dust in his lungs. The master mason would often say, "It's not about the finished wall, lad. It's about the next brick, laid true." At first, Thomas thought it was just a saying to keep him going. But over the years, he began to understand. The satisfaction wasn't just in the completed structure, but in the precise swing of the hammer, the perfect cut of the stone, the feel of the mortar between his fingers. It was in the mastery of the craft itself, the quiet pride in a job done. Well, even if that job was endlessly repetitive, he was Sisyphus, laying one brick after another, knowing that buildings eventually crumble. But finding his happiness in the integrity of each individual act, he found his meaning in the present, in the tangible connection between his hands and the material. Rather than in the fleeting glory of a finished product, consider the story of Maria, a hospice nurse. Every day Maria faced the undeniable truth of mortality. Her patients were not getting better. They were nearing the end of their lives. Her work was not about curing, but about comforting, about alleviating pain, about offering dignity in the face of the inevitable. From an external perspective, one might see her job as profoundly depressing, a constant confrontation with loss and futility. Yet Maria found immense joy and purpose in her daily tasks. It wasn't about winning against death, for death always won. It was about the small victories. A patient smile, a moment of shared laughter, the peace she could bring. To a suffering soul, the hand she held as someone passed. Each act of care was a conscious choice, a defiant affirmation of life and compassion in the shadow of death. She was Sisyphus, pushing against the weight of illness and sorrow, knowing the boulder would always roll back down. In the act of pushing, in the profound human connection, in the lucid awareness of her role, she found her happiness. She wasn't denying the tragedy. She was embracing her part in it, finding meaning in the very act of caring rather than in any ultimate outcome. The fleeting moments of connection, the brief alleviation of suffering, came her profound triumphs. Then there was David, a software developer who spent his days writing code. Much of his work involved fixing bugs, refining existing systems, or building features that might be obsolete in a few years. The digital world was constantly evolving, and what was cutting edge today would be old news tomorrow. It was a never-ending cycle of creation and obsolescence, yet David loved it. He found immense satisfaction in the elegance of a well-written line of code, the challenge of solving a complex problem, the intellectual puzzle of optimizing a system. He knew his creations wouldn't last forever. The boulder of technology would always roll back down, demanding new solutions. But his happiness came from the process itself, the intellectual engagement, the mastery of his craft. He was Sisyphus, crafting digital boulders, knowing they were temporary, but finding his joy in the precision, the logic, and the sheer intellectual effort of the push. He found his contentment in the immediate challenge, the flow state of problem-solving. Rather than in the ephemeral nature of the digital products he helped create, the intrinsic reward of the work, the satisfaction of a clean solution, was enough. Camus' Sisyphus isn't a fool, he's a rebel. He knows his fate, he understands the absurdity of his task, and precisely because of that knowledge, he is free. He is free from false hope, free from the illusion of ultimate purpose, free to define his own meaning in the very act of living. His happiness isn't a naive optimism, but a conscious, defiant joy born from lucidity. It's the scorn he feels for, his fate that liberates him, allowing him to embrace the present moment fully. Consider the story of a marathon runner, Sarah. She trains for months, enduring pain, exhaustion, and self-doubt. On race day, she pushes her body to its limits, often experiencing moments of agony. The finish line is a goal, but the true happiness, she'd tell you, isn't just in crossing it. It's in the early morning runs when the city is still asleep. The feeling of her muscles burning, the mental discipline required to keep going when every fiber of her being screams to stop. It's in the struggle, the self-mastery, the pushing of her own limits. She knows that after one race, there will be another, and that her body will eventually age and slow. The boulder of physical challenge is always there, but her happiness is found in the conscious engagement with that challenge, in the act of running itself, in the defiant pursuit of personal excellence. She doesn't run for an external reward as much as for the internal triumph of pushing through, the pain of mastering her own will. The fleeting moment of crossing the finish line is merely a punctuation mark in a much larger, more satisfying narrative of continuous effort. Then there's the farmer, tending to his land year after year. He plows, he sows, he harvests, knowing that seasons will change, pests will appear, and droughts may come. His work is a constant battle against the elements, a repetitive cycle of growth and decay. He knows that the fruits of his labor are temporary, consumed, or returned to the earth. Yet many farmers find a deep, abiding happiness in their connection to the land. In the rhythm of the seasons, in the simple act of nurturing life, their joy isn't dependent on a perfect harvest every year, but on the conscious engagement with the earth, the physical labor, the intimate knowledge of the soil and the plants. They are Sisyphus, cultivating a field that will always demand more work, but finding their contentment in the honest toil. The connection to something fundamental, and the defiant act of bringing forth life from the ground. The beauty of a sprouting seed, the smell of freshly turned earth, the warmth of the sun on their skin. These are the moments where happiness resides, not in the grand, abstract idea of feeding the world, but in the tangible, immediate experience of the work itself. This idea that Sisyphus is happy isn't about ignoring suffering or pretending that life is always easy. It's about a profound shift in perspective. It's about recognizing that while the universe may not care about our individual struggles, we do. And in that caring, in that conscious engagement, in that defiant act of pushing our own unique boulders, we create our own meaning, our own joy. The happiness isn't given. It's forged in the crucible of the absurd. It's a happiness that comes from lucidity. From facing the truth head-on and choosing to live fully despite it. Consider the act of learning a new language. It's a long, often frustrating process of memorization, grammar rules, and awkward conversations. You might spend years studying and still never achieve perfect fluency. The boulder of linguistic mastery is always there. It's always rolling back down with new vocabulary to learn, new nuances to grasp. Yet many language learners find immense satisfaction in the journey itself, small victories of understanding. A new phrase, of holding a simple conversation, of connecting with a new culture. These are the moments of happiness. It's the conscious engagement with the challenge, the intellectual effort, expansion of one's own mind that brings joy. The happiness isn't solely in the elusive goal of fluency, but in the daily, defiant act of pushing that linguistic boulder one word, one sentence at a time. The process itself becomes the reward, the continuous effort, a source of quiet pride, an ongoing discovery, or think of an artist who dedicates their life to a craft, perhaps painting, writing, or playing music. They spend countless hours honing their skills, facing rejection, self-doubt, and the knowledge that their work might never achieve widespread recognition or lasting fame. The boulder of creative expression is always there, demanding new ideas, new forms, new ways of seeing. Yet for many, the true happiness lies not in the outcome, the sold painting, the published book, the standing ovation, but in the act of creation itself. It's in the flow state of painting, the struggle to find the right word, the communion with their instrument. It's in the defiant act of bringing something new into the world, even if that something is temporary, flawed, or misunderstood. Joy is in the process, the engagement, the conscious expression of their inner world, regardless of external validation. They are Sisyphus, pushing the boulder of their creative vision, finding their contentment in the very act of pushing, in the profound satisfaction of bringing their unique voice to life. Thomas the stonemason often thought of this. His hands, gnarled and strong, had shaped countless stones. He knew that the buildings he helped construct would eventually crumble, that his name wouldn't be remembered by history. But the feel of the stone, the precision of the cut, the satisfaction of a perfectly laid course, these were his moments of happiness. They were small, personal triumphs in the face of a vast, indifferent universe. They were his defiant yes to the absurdity of existence. Camus' message isn't about resigning oneself to a bleak fate. It's about liberation. It's about recognizing that if there's no inherent meaning, then we are free to create our own. And the most profound meaning, the deepest happiness, can be found in the very act of engaging with life, with its challenges, its repetitions, its inevitable ends. Sisyphus is happy because he chooses to be, chooses to embrace his task, to scorn the gods who condemned him, to find his triumph in the conscious, defiant effort of each push. His happiness is not a gift. It is a conquest. It is a victory of the human spirit over the silence of the world. And in that victory, there is a profound, unshakable joy. The sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across Thomas's porch. He put down his chisel, the steel gleaming faintly in the fading light. He thought of the endless cycles of life, the sun rising and setting, the seasons turning, the constant ebb and flow of existence. Each day brought its own set of tasks, its own small boulders to push. Some days the climb felt steeper, the stone heavier. Other days a surprising lightness would fill him, a sense of quiet grace in the effort. This wasn't about denying the difficulty, but about accepting it as an inherent part of the journey. He remembered a time, years ago, when a particularly challenging stone had broken his best chisel. Frustration had boiled within him. He could have given up, declared the stone unworkable. But something in him, a deep-seated stubbornness perhaps, had refused to yield. He'd found another tool, adjusted his approach, and eventually the stone had yielded. The satisfaction of that moment, the quiet triumph over a seemingly insurmountable obstacle, had been far greater than any easy success. It was in those moments of friction, of resistance, that the true joy of his craft revealed itself. The boulder rolling back down wasn't a defeat, it was simply the setup for the next equally meaningful push. Thomas thought of the countless ways people find their own boulders and their own forms of happiness. The parent who patiently teaches a child to ride a bike, knowing there will be falls and scraped knees, but finding joy in the child's eventual triumph. The volunteer who dedicates hours to a cause, knowing that systemic problems are vast and complex, but finding meaning in each small act of service. The scientist who pursues a cure for a disease, knowing that breakthroughs are rare and often preceded by years of failed experiments, but driven by the profound hope of alleviating suffering. These were all Sisyphus figures, engaged in seemingly endless tasks, yet finding their contentment in the conscious, defiant act of engagement itself. The happiness of Sisyphus, Thomas concluded, wasn't about a fleeting emotion, but a state of being. It was a profound acceptance of reality, stripped of illusions, and a conscious choice to imbue that reality with one's own meaning through action. It was the understanding that while the universe might be indifferent, human consciousness was. Not we had the power to assign value, to find purpose, to create joy in the very act of living, regardless of external circumstances or ultimate outcomes. The struggle wasn't a curse. It was the canvas upon which life's true masterpieces were painted, and in that painting, stroke by deliberate stroke, lay the profound, unshakable happiness of Sisyphus.